Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Thursday. You've made it through the entire week thus far, and we look forward to the graduation tomorrow for the class of 2020 of the Maryland Banking School. We are in for a real treat this afternoon. All three classes have come together, and we're going to be featuring two amazing leaders within our banking industry. And this is a great opportunity to hear what their backgrounds are, what their views are of the challenges and the opportunities for the banking industry. And so we're going to start with some comments about them and their careers and you know, basically how they've come to be who they are today within our industry. And then we will move through this segment, and actually throughout this segment, there's still an opportunity to chat and pose questions to our panelists, but then they will be coming to us live as we continue in this 2-hour session of the Banking Leadership Panel. So I'm really thrilled to introduce these two individuals to you. BJ Goetz is the chairman of the Maryland Bankers Association. The association is 125 years old this year, and BJ is going to be presiding, or is presiding, over the association for this remarkable milestone. BJ is president and CEO of a bank out in Western Maryland. I'll let him talk a little bit more about that. West of Annapolis, BJ, I think maybe about 70 minutes or so, 80 minutes or so, Middletown Valley Bank, and Community Bank, and an individual who actually graduated from the Maryland Banking School in 2004. So BJ is going to have a great perspective for us today. And then joining BJ is Ramon Luby, and Ramon is a senior vice president and the public policy lead for Bank of America. And BJ and Ramon and I have worked together over several years now, and his title sort of masks what his full impact and role is in the industry, because it's not only within his bank, but he's doing some amazing things within his community at the national level, at the congressional level. So I'm really, really thrilled to introduce our other panelist. And Ramon Luby is Senior Vice President and Public Policy Lead for Bank of America. I've worked with Ramon for several years and have come to appreciate the fact that what he does and the impact he makes is much broader than perhaps what his title provides. And because of the incredible things that he has done, Ramon was elected by the members of the Maryland Bankers Association as vice chairman of the association. So Ramon will become chairman of the association in 3 years. And this year he chairs our Government Relations Council, a really important body, volunteer body of the association that Ramon has been a part of ever since his involvement with the bank. So again, we're absolutely thrilled to have the two of them with us. I do encourage you, as we are going through this presentation, this part of the presentation, to chime in on the chat as you've done all week, pose your questions or even comments, and then both BJ and Ramon will be with us live after we conclude this pre-recorded session. So with that, I'm going to start by asking both BJ and Ramon to share. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are? How'd you grow up? Did you grow up in Maryland? If not, how did you end up coming to Maryland? And then after we get off that, we'll ask a little bit more about how did you become a banker? So maybe first, BJ, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a lifelong Marylander, actually a Western Marylander. At Kathleen, as you mentioned, we sit about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes west of the Baltimore and the DC market. It takes us about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to get to both, but grew up in Western Maryland, graduated from Frostburg State University. So I kind of stayed in the Western Maryland track. I was a finance and an economics major. It kind of worked out really well in being in banking, because you take all of those pieces and you work them together. A little tidbit about me: I have 4 daughters. My oldest is 20 years old and a finance major at Salisbury University. My next daughter, 18 years old, will be attending Frostburg. She wants to go on to be a teacher. And then I have a 9th grade daughter and a 4th grade daughter. So exciting times in my house. One last little tidbit, which I like to tell people, that you find in a rarity today: I married my high school sweetheart. And we're approaching 21 years coming up here in a short amount of time. And I live within a quarter mile of the house that I grew up in. Great place to raise a family, great place to work. Close enough to the city atmosphere in the metropolitan areas, but still plenty of natural beauty and nature out here in Western Maryland that would love to share with all of the students. When you get time to come our way, please look me up and give me a call.
BJ, that's fantastic. And I'm sure Ramon he's trying to fast forward in his mind where his two young children will be when they're talking about going off to college. So Ramon, tell us a little bit about how you came to Maryland or grew up in Maryland, a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. And, I knew I had a lot to learn from BJ, but I mean, just listening to his intro, I realized I got more to learn as well. So, but I tell you that I moved to DC. I moved to the Maryland area, Greenbelt to be exact, in the waning days of 2011, and subsequently, found a place to set up my my spokes here, if you will. I'm an originally lifelong Floridian. I moved here to Maryland in 2011. At the end of 2011, have lived in several parts of the state, and currently, have office. Bank of America, our offices are primarily in Prince George's County and Baltimore County. So I work between those offices primarily. And when I'm not in Annapolis, having a chance to see members of the association and leadership and staff, I find myself in Washington, D.C. But, I absolutely love Maryland, and, I can't wait until the students of the school get a chance to come on down, I think, for our Government Affairs Day. Love to spend some time and introduce you to, what it is here, what we do here in D.C. Around banking. But I tell you, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and look forward to sharing some time with you all.
Great, thank you. And Ramon, you have a son and a daughter.
I do. Funny enough, I have coaxed my oldest, who's about to turn 4, into giving daddy some quiet time. I'm going to sell a book on how to do that. That's gonna fund the retirement here. So, but luckily our youngest, 1.5 years, he is taking a bit of a nap. So
great.
Get some
Perfect
quiet
timing.
time.
Okay, excellent.
You love those times when it's nap time. That's a time to relax.
That's it. Well, Ramon, why don't we stay with you? So tell us, you've got such an amazing trajectory of your career. And I know for me as a trade association leader, having somebody like Ramon, who's actually worked in a trade association in addition to being a banker, is such a great perspective to have when you're struggling with issues and trying to reconcile different points of view, perhaps, of your industry when it comes to an issue. That doesn't happen very often, but it surely is helpful to have those discussions and that dynamic that Ramon has that many bankers don't have. So Ramon, talk a little bit about how you became a banker. Was it a dream you had or just sort of happened?
I'm going to tell you this and you're going to laugh at me, okay? So don't laugh too hard. I fought the industry, fought becoming what I was destined to be. And what do I mean by that? In the 5th grade, I remember this like it was yesterday, but in the 5th grade, I went, belonged to this program, and I would go to a different school every few days. And I remember us getting involved in what's called the Florida Stock Market Game, which was sponsored by FINRA. And I ended up becoming the secretary, and lo and behold, because of an error, our team won. We beat college classes. We beat basically, all these folks as elementary kid students, because I bubbled in, we had the Scantrons. I bubbled in the wrong stock symbol, and that stock symbol went off on a tear, and lo and behold, we're the 1994 Florida Stock Market Game winners.
Wow. You mean for the whole state, Ramon? Are you saying for the whole state?
The entire state. I mean, it was, I briefly remember what it was. It was either a nursing home company or someone that supplied nursing homes. And basically they just went on a tear for 6 weeks. and happen to bubble in the wrong thing, and there it is. But you would think after having that happen, oh, bank, I got to look more into this banking thing. I tried everything. I was in the fire service. I was a senior member of the fire service. I worked for an auto part leader, and same role, government affairs, external affairs, industry affairs. I even worked in trade at the U.S. Chamber in the middle of the Arab Spring, thinking about how multinational companies who really have roots in this area that was going through this uncertain change, and we've seen how that played out, but in a time of uncertainty, and so I've had all these different pathways and stopping points where I picked up tools that really have just galvanized me to go further into the industry of banking. And before coming over to Bank of America, I worked and led public policy for the Consumer Data Industry Association. So this was my way back into financial services. If you think about consumer data, think about credit reports, think about risk management, think about the tools that we use as bankers to ensure that we're giving folks, what they need, and ensuring that we're staying true to our prudential regulators, and examining, well, this is good for the client. This is what our clients need, and here's why. Right? We're doing the empirical testing to ensure that things are right for them. So, fair housing, TELA, UDAP, all these are basically acronyms of laws, and important laws that have been passed or updated in the last 10 years, last decade, that have a real impact on what we do and what my colleagues do on the front lines, helping clients every day. And so with that, about 4 years ago, came over to Bank of America and been here ever since. Kathleen is really too kind. The amount of time that we spend together, I would imagine that she would want a break, but then she comes back and she invites me to talk to her some more. But honestly, the depth of the work that we have done over the past several years, dealing with the legislature, dealing with really peculiar issues that on the surface, most folks will say, well, this won't impact the bank. But when you dig into it, it really does have some interesting consequences if left unchecked. So I tell our team all the time, I'm so proud of having the opportunity to work with the Maryland Bankers Association in this role, as well as working with Kathleen and Mindy and Cindy and the entire team. And now I get a chance to continue to learn from BJ and our executive leadership team and all of our bankers who are on our board of directors. So it is an absolute great opportunity for me. And, again, I'm just happy to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to your questions later.
So Ramon, before we go to BJ with that same question, so when you talked about that progression, and you were in Florida, and then you came up to the chamber and CDIA and then the bank, were you recruited, or were these jobs you heard about and you went for them?
Well, I almost think of it, a lot of people don't know this. I'm a washed up basketball player here. I played very competitive basketball in high school, and I told myself, I said, listen, we're going to the University of Florida. We're going to walk on. The year before, they had made it to the last game of the tournament, and just barely, couldn't get past. And if you follow sports, you know that UF went on to have a tremendous run in basketball, winning back-to-back in 06 and 07. And I told myself as a freshman, hey, I'm going to play there. I'm going to walk on. I know enough people. I'm good enough. And lo and behold, I got hurt. And right before the time where everyone goes on to try out, it was clear that I wasn't going to have that opportunity. And so rather than just sort of sulking and moving on, I actually took a bit of what I learned about being a good basketball player. And what that is adding tools to your game, adding skills that make you better across, and not just you, but make your teammates better. And so I took that approach. And so if you think about, the things that I have done to get to this place. When I was 25-year-old, I was a chief officer in the fire service. I was a public information education emergency management officer. There are things that you learn from folks who pull people out of burning buildings or go swimming into the Gulf of Mexico to save people that you can't really learn from this in the same ways that you as you learn in this industry. Same as with trade and doing work internationally. And so I bring all of that to bear here. And if you tell me that this is sure happenstance, I tell you that it can't be, because the things that I have learned in that progression really do pull out, I'm able to now pull out those tools and use them very comfortably here in banking. And so I really encourage folks to think about those odd, if you will, odd jobs, odd industries you may have worked in before coming to banking, and think about what you can take away from them and how they help now.
Oh, that's fantastic, Ramon. Thank you. Gosh, I could talk to you for a long time about the fire service, so we'll have to come back to that offline.
I'm excited.
Fascinating. And basketball too. So BJ, did you wake up one day and say, I want to be a banker?
Yeah, no, not at all. So my story dates back to when I was a 10-year-old kid. My dad started a business. He started a small maintenance and janitorial service, and came from very blue-collar means, very hardworking people that, quite frankly, my sisters were all grown and moved away, and they couldn't afford a babysitter, and I wasn't allowed to stay home by myself. So I went to work with them pretty much every evening of the week from 10 years old on. And it was, you mentioned dates, it was May of 1995. I was 18 years old, and we received the contract for the cleaning services for a bank located here in Western Maryland. It was about 14 branches, and the company at that point was fairly large, and I took responsibility within my dad's company for basically Hagerstown West all the way to Oakland, Maryland. So every evening of the week, I was responsible for about 27 people and keeping things flowing across the western side of the state. And it was really my first introduction to people in suits, right? I wear a suit every day. I do that out of respect for my audience. I do that out of respect for my peers and respect for my team. But it was my first real exposure to the world and the industry within the business environment from a very professional setting. So every evening I would come in, I would get started and into work, and there would be several bankers there, mostly from the commercial banking department or from the executive side. And basically I interacted with them quite a bit. And after about, about 8-9 months, I got a phone call one day from who was then the chief operating officer of the bank. And he called me up and he asked me to go to lunch, and I went to lunch with him. It was probably, February timeframe. He asked what my plans were. I told him, I was attending Frostburg State University. It was kind of centrally located for where I had to be every night. And he asked me to be a summer teller. So I went on to be a summer teller, worked at just about every branch that the bank had, covering vacations, and summer's wrapping down. I'm getting ready to go back to school, and he comes to me and he says, "Hey, we have a branch in Frostburg. Why don't you just work Saturdays for me?" And I enjoyed the interaction with the people, the customers coming in and out the door. I enjoyed the confidence and trust that people started to bestow. And if you're a young person, a new teller walking in, you have those customers that just won't come to you no matter what you do. They will wait and go to the customer associate beside of you. And I took it as a challenge to win them over to make them come deal with me. So I really just enjoyed the process. So I stayed on for Saturdays. As I was approaching graduation, I got that phone call again to go to lunch. And the gentleman at that point was the president and CEO of the bank. And he tells me it was about about a $400 million bank at the time. He tells me that he wants to start a manager trainee program for the branch network to start to move people through. And if you know anything about your history of banking in the state of Maryland, First National Bank of Maryland, Maryland National Bank, all these banks, Equitable, they had these great management training programs that a lot of my peers today and many of your CEOs and executives at your banks would have come through those training programs. So it's like, okay, well, that'll be pretty cool. I think I was the first, only, and last person to go through this program. It really never kind of got off the ground, but found it to be very successful for me. I worked in the branch environment for about 1.5 years. And knew with I had developed really a good interaction with commercial-based customers on the deposit side and on treasury management services and cash management and those types of things. And I found that my small business experience really was a benefit. So made the move over to the commercial banking department. Stayed there for quite a long time until 2012 when I came here to Middletown Valley Bank. Was offered the job. Will never forget going through the interview process. And really, I was what I consider to be very young at the time from an experience level standpoint, but threw my hat in the game really to gain the learning experience of what it would be like to interview for an executive job. And I guess either they believed everything I was telling them, or the snow job was that perfect that they offered me the position. And then I kind of put my hand on my head and said, what do I do now?
And BJ, just when you mentioned that, the bank you went to as CEO,
yeah.
How long had the prior CEO been there?
My predecessor was in place for 30 years as the bank CEO. He worked at the bank for 50 years prior to his retirement. When I came here, the bank was about $145 million in assets. We're sitting somewhere around $630 million in assets, all done organically on the bank asset side. The communities, the customers, the team that we have built. I was employee number 35 at the time, and we're pushing around 150 employees today. And leadership is an interesting thing. I will kind of end this, Kathleen, with 2 comments for you. The first is you never know who you come across, to Ramon's point, that you can learn from. Ramon flatters me unnecessarily. I'm so excited to have him come on to our executive team at the MBA. He's just an amazing addition, and never believe I was nowhere close to winning a stock program in the state of Maryland, and Florida's a heck of a lot bigger. So you can tell where the intelligence lies in this conversation. But that gentleman that recruited me into banking, who became the president and CEO of what was then Farmers and Merchants, the consolidation down to Susquehanna. He was president and CEO of Susquehanna. A gentleman by the name of Jim Pierney is the chairman of Middletown Valley Bank today, a former chairman of the MBA. So you never know who you're going to come across throughout your life, career or otherwise, that is going to leave significant impact on what you do. And every interaction that you have, you walk away learning something, and you never forget who taught it to you. Because there are many smart people that came before me. There are definitely smarter people in 2.5 years that will come after me, Ramon. But we continue to plow and move forward in exciting times. The last thing that I will leave you with is support the customer. And the customer is defined as any interaction that you have, whether it be over the phone with a coworker or a peer, the true customer that walks through the door, or the people dumping the trash at the branch at night. Those people bring all walks of education to life, and they should all be handled and treated as a customer. That's the motto of what we do. To Ramon's point, the staff at the MBA, going back to when I graduated in 2004 and my 3 years in your shoes, I could tell you all kinds of stories of Tom Laughlin and Phil Mantua and all those guys, and Kathleen and Cindy and others. It's the greatest experience that you'll go through in banking. And you take away and you cherish everything that you learn and the relationships that you make.
That's fantastic, BJ. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think we're going to move quickly to the live session, but I wanted to close with one final question. And then once we get into the live session, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions from the students, around the PPP program and some of the other things we've been dealing with here and now, but continuing to reinforce those leadership principles that have helped you all succeed in your careers. But I think for the final question for this pre-recorded session, why don't we talk about what surprised you about the industry? Is there anything that surprised you as you came into this industry that, perhaps has been one of those learning experiences? Ramon, why don't we go to you for this one?
Sure. And listen, BJ, I can see exactly why you are the CEO. There was no accident there. And I think the students are listening will pick up on that as well. And so, again, it just highlights just the incredible network that you get here in the banking industry. Then you hear a story like BJ's and it just makes you just understand that here's where you're supposed to be. I would tell you from my point of view, coming up, very similar to BJ. My mom was a nurse. I grew up in a very blue collar, if you will, neighborhood. I grew up in the shadow of Dolphin Stadium, where you had many Super Bowls and all these really cool events. But just a little bit away, there's the reality of that community is not really enjoying the benefits of all of that. So I would tell you the thing that really surprised me, right? You understand that financial services is a place where folks can have long, sustained careers and can do very well for themselves. I'll tell you the thing that really just knocked me off my feet was the want and desire to help people. From my frontline units to my relationship managers, to folks in the private bank, to folks who are doing things in the security, the desire to help their client. And to BJ's point, if we talk a bit about clients, it's not necessarily just the one-to-one. Oh, you work for me, or I'm doing a thing for you. It's now, I would tell you, it's expanded to thinking about how we treat our communities and the ones that we serve. And having that takeaway is something that just really has been a pleasant surprise. It's not, I will tell you, it's cultural, and it's not one bank or two banks own it. I think if you have a chance to talk, just talk amongst yourselves after this and think about what your desire is. Yeah, you want to do well, but you also want to help the client. You also want to help the communities that we serve. And that's one of the things that you're doing by being a part of this. So Kathleen, to your question, I think that's my biggest surprising takeaway.
No, that's really significant what you just shared there, Ramon. That is so true. And that's what I have seen about the industry as well. So BJ, tell us what surprised you about the industry.
Yeah, along those lines, I think that every bank, no matter the size, no matter where they serve, no matter the geography, no matter what's happening in the world, there's really one goal. And I learned this very on that banks are there to support the financial vibrance of the communities that they serve. And it doesn't matter what bank it is. It doesn't matter what size. It doesn't matter what community. It can be a rural small town in the Midwest. It can be in a major metropolitan area such as Washington, D.C. And the goal is the same. And the way we go about it is oftentimes together. And, the surprising thing about what I've learned starting with my first exposure to the Maryland Bankers Association at Maryland Banking School is the camaraderie of the banking community and how we all work together to accomplish that goal, which is to improve the financial stability and the economic conditions of all of our communities. So, in a very competitive landscape, even back in the day when I was at Maryland Banking School and after, I could pick up the phone and call a counterpart at Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Queenstown Bank or Fulton Bank and discuss the challenges that we're facing and know that we're in it together. So that, when you get into, I grew up playing sports as well, and you had your rivalries and you had your competitions, and there was a lot of blood that was spilled on athletic fields. In this industry, the camaraderie, especially in times like we're facing right now, is absolutely amazing. And just, my exposure, first of all, Kathleen and Cindy and the MBA are amazing at what they pull together and do. And, those times are seen today as much as ever. But for all of us to come together and share our thoughts, share our ideas, and be consistent, it's just, that's probably the biggest thing, Kathleen, the camaraderie, no matter where you are and where you work.
Yeah, that absolutely. Since everyone shares that common goal and that common vision, that's what brings us together, even though you're all competitors. And we've seen that firsthand. So I tell you, this has been such a great, I'm going to call it a teaser, because we are going to now go off the pre-recorded session, which I know that we've had students who've been participating in the chat throughout your presentation, but now we're going to go live. And I have other questions. This is to the students. I have other questions I'm prepared to ask BJ and Ramon, and they're prepared to address, but ideally, we'd like to hear what's on your mind. So we look forward to connecting with you shortly in the live setting. And thank you so much, BJ and Ramon. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I hope the students see that this is why I do what I do, is the opportunity to work for these and with these amazing leaders within our industry. It makes it just an unbelievably fantastic experience. And we look forward to sharing that with the other students who are in the banking school. So again, BJ and Ramon, thank you.
Hey, Kathleen, just very quickly, students completely encourage your questions to come to both Ramon and I. My request is I get the softballs, he gets the hard ones, and we'll just go from there. But looking forward to hearing from you guys.
Is that just hazing? Is that just executive committee hazing? That's okay. I'm all for it.